the world of X is truly a interesting place for debates. I don't think it is personally the place for a debate, but nevertheless, people seem to think that it is a good place to debate behind the keyboard, so to speak. But it is still useful in getting a great deal of information about how someone thinks. And Konstantin Kisin, who I have had on this very show, and I would love to have another conversation with him, because I think that he is capable of taking really difficult topics and rationalizing them to the point where you can actually make sense of it. Meanwhile, on the other hand, you've got Dave Smith that goes into things highly emotional, and some of the points that he tries to make, when you actually apply rational thinking to it, end up falling flat on their face. Every single argument I have heard Dave Smith make, it may sound great on the outset, but when you think about it for more than 5 seconds, it actually makes no sense whatsoever. And when you apply rational, logical thinking to it, you can just see that, oh, it's pure emotion. Now, recently, Konstantin Kisin went on Piers Morgan Uncensored, and by Konstantin's own words, the only reason why he went on Piers' show to debate Dave Smith is so that, well, Piers Morgan said that he wouldn't do Konstantin's show unless Konstantin did his show first. Fair enough. Now, one of the things that I actually really like about Konstantin is how smart he really is. And when he went into this debate, you could honestly tell Konstantin was like, oh boy, I am debating someone that is pure emotional and someone who's definitely super prideful, super egotistical, and trying to get to like actual real points that make somewhat sense is going to be difficult. Here is a particular moment, Konstantin calling out Dave Smith on his very own argument or logic, but Dave Smith doesn't seem to think that it's hypocritical.
You've invited me on your show many, many times over the last year. I've always said no when talking about this stuff because I don't consider myself an expert on these issues, which is why I've consistently turned it down. The only reason I'm here tonight, by the way, is you said to me, I'm not going on your show until you come back on mine. And I thought that was actually fair enough. So particularly given that you have me here with somebody who's also not an expert, this is essentially two guys in a bar, in a pub, chatting about their opinions. So that's fine. However, I think the reality is that an issue of this complexity and seriousness should not be addressed by a former comedian and a current comedian. I don't really think that's the right approach. But my point to Dave is something else. My point to Dave is whenever he wants to take a shortcut and disagree with someone who's saying something that's different to him, he will resort to exactly the same thing that Douglas said to him, which is, you actually don't really know what you're talking about. You don't have the expertise to talk about this. You haven't been to the region. You haven't read enough. You haven't done this. You haven't done that. And that's exactly what Douglas was saying to Dave. Now, you can agree or disagree with whether that's right or wrong, but the fact that Dave is violating his own standards seems to me to be pretty hypocritical.
Dave, you're a rank hypocrite.
That's what Piers saying it, not me. I did not add the word rank.
Yeah, he would have done if he thought about it.
Bit. No, I'm sorry. There's for the record, I just want to say me and Rob Schneider made up. I've always been a big fan of his. We message back and forth, and we're cool. But no, I'm sorry. Obviously, this is ridiculous, and there's no hypocrisy here at all. It is if we were to come to a debate, and what I brought to the debate was I just said, "Shut up," and that was all I did for the debate, was just tell you to shut up. And I had no argument, and I didn't counter any of your arguments, but I just told you to shut up. And you were to say, man, that was a really ridiculous way to debate. And then I pointed out that you had also told someone to shut up once in your life. That wouldn't mean you're guilty of hypocrisy. It's a completely different standard to be dismissive to someone on Twitter than to agree to debate them on the biggest show in the world, show up in front of tens of millions of people, and your argument essentially is just to dismiss them. Your point doesn't matter. So no, and also, clearly, I wasn't telling Rob Schneider because he's a comedian, he can't have an opinion on this. I was telling him that I don't really think he knows what he's talking about on this issue. And then Which
is exactly what Douglas said to you.
Yes, but he didn't back it up with anything. That's the point.
And by the way,
Konstantin, no one would have had a problem. The whole point was that Douglas had an opportunity to demonstrate his superior level of expertise and did not. And this is the overwhelming opinion.
Well, I don't think that's quite true. I think on a lot of the subject.
Yes, you can honestly see that Douglas Murray has truly done a number on Dave Smith. Now, Dave Smith, after the debate with Douglas Murray, as we know, went on an entire week-long or even month-long, well, now it's still continuing, so he hasn't gotten over it, long bitch fest about why he won the debate and why his emotional monkeys are jumping on the same bandwagon as Dave Smith and not Douglas Murray, because Douglas Murray happens to think a lot higher or highly than Dave Smith does. He doesn't think on necessarily an emotional standpoint. He uses logic and reason with his arguments, but Dave Smith can't even see that. He can't even see the irony of he's just basically being hypocritical again in this very moment. He called himself out, and Konstantin called him out at the very end, and Dave couldn't even see it. He goes, "This is utterly ridiculous." If I was just to go into a debate and say to the person, which, by the way, is one of the most useless points I've heard someone make in a long time, and I've heard some pretty horrendous points, but all I do is go, "Shut up." Essentially, Dave Smith is trying to equate that to what Douglas Murray did on Joe Rogan, which is not what he did at all. That's exactly what Dave Smith did, I'll have you know, because Dave Smith had no retorts, nothing to back up any of his claims, whereas Douglas said, if you haven't been to the region, why do you think that your points are better than someone that's actually been to the region and know what the hell he's talking about? And by the way, Douglas Murray was also saying, what are you feeding? A lot of his points were very, very smart. Yes, he could have expanded on his points, 100%. He didn't need to. He said what he needed to say. And Dave Smith, ever since, as you're probably already aware, his brain is mush. He's struggling, and Konstantin knows that, and he pointed it out. The entire debate, the entire conversation, Konstantin's face, you could tell, look of pain, look of agony, the hypothetical situations, the arguments that Dave Smith was trying to make fell flat on their faces when you applied logic and reason to them. It was a painful conversation to watch. And a number of times, Dave Smith asked Piers Morgan for help. It was amazing. Piers, help me out here. Do you not agree? I'll be making another video about that because it's quite fascinating what happened. Konstantin was just like, you've got to be kidding me. I am sitting with someone that is actually a dingbat, like a dim-witted dingbat. And loads of people seem to think that. And watch Dave Smith now go on X or go on podcasts and then try and slam Konstantin, saying that he's got no idea what he's talking about. The level, and I've said this many times, the level of pride and ego that Dave Smith has and possesses on himself is truly astronomical. He can't even see where he's gone wrong. He can't even see his own hypocritical nature. And that's when you know that's narcissistic, man. You're not going to get through to anyone like Dave Smith, because Dave Smith thinks that he's right. Unless Dave Smith changes his mind because he goes further into the black hole, there's no way you can appeal to him with reasons and facts. Konstantin did it a number of times, but nah, he tried to worm his way out of it. And again, when you hate one particular group of people, every point of rational or rationality falls flat on its face because you don't care. You really do not care. And when it comes to defending Islam, defending Iran, defending terror, seems like Dave Smith is very good at that. But I'll go against the Jews because that seems like the trendy thing to do, exactly what Piers Morgan is trying to do as well. Now, Konstantin says this, as an outside observer and regular visitor my impression of the American public opinion is that it is extremely sensible. Americans absolutely do not want boots on the ground in the Middle East or, frankly, anywhere else. Seems reasonable, right? We've had enough of wars. Americans do not want rogue regimes to get nuclear weapons. Americans support providing passive assistance to Israel, air defense. I don't know what the American public think about actually bombing Iranian nuclear sites themselves. I suspect that they will mostly be in favor of it, especially on the right. I would be too. You don't want Islamic regimes to have nuclear weapons. Personally, I agree with them on all that except the last point. America would be better off letting Israel do the work and keeping its hands clean. Exactly. One thing almost no one outside of America understands about America is just how different all the different states and subcultures are, and how different what you see on X is from the regular American you'll meet in the street. Yes, very true. Neither Tucker nor Lindsey Graham represent the average American in my experience. I would have to agree with Konstantin on that again. This is likely the reason the decision being debated internally at the White House is about item 4, US attacking Iran directly. It's a risky move in terms of the potential for escalation, but also in terms of domestic politics. Exactly. So Trump's got to be very mindful and very careful what he does moving forward. He said that Iran, he wants to continue negotiating, but he will make a decision within the next 2 weeks whether or not he's going to actively get involved with the war effort or basically strike Iran directly. May not mean boots on the ground. It may just mean American weapons, American personnel, like planes, directly bombing certain sites. Because Trump has said quite adamantly for a long time that Iran cannot have nuclear weapons. That being said, my friends, here is a moment between Konstantin and Dave Smith about, and you got to look at Konstantin's face for this when Dave Smith says his point. It's hilarious. Watch it.
Failed. Not only did he not have weapons of mass destruction, not only was he not in on 9/11, but we also didn't liberate the people. The worst thing that ever happened to the people of Iraq was George W. Bush's war there. And as far as Iran enriching up to 60%, yes, it's true that they only need, I think, between 3 to 5% for civilian nuclear purposes, and maybe some like around 20 to 25% for some medical needs. But that is what is known as a latent nuclear deterrent. There is another reason why they would have that. They want to demonstrate that they can get the bomb, but they don't have it right now to stop something like this happening. But the bottom line is that since 2007, our CIA has said they're not, they don't have nuclear weapons, and they're not striving to achieve them. Tulsi Gabbard, not only in her testimony, but in the Director of National Intelligence as her capacity serving that role, in the annual threat assessment just put out a couple months ago, reaffirmed the same thing. And so is the global community. Iran has been willing to negotiate this entire time. And maybe the negotiations haven't been successful, but even Benjamin Netanyahu, in his interview with Brett Baer the other day, couldn't even manage to lie and say that they've broken out and they're pursuing. He said maybe a year. The same thing he's been saying since I was 7 years old, lying over and over and over again because he wants a regime change war here. And he's said this in his own words, and so have all of the neoconservatives. Look, right here on your show, Piers, which I think might be the most fascinating moment in the history of Uncensored, when General Wesley Clark reaffirmed that not only had he seen the plans to overthrow 7 countries in 5 years, but that it went all the way back to the early 90s, and that it was revived, in his words, in a study paid for by the Israelis. They've gotten the 6 other ones. This is the 7th one. This war is not about nukes that Iran doesn't have. And just one more point I would make, as the great Scott Horton said the other day. Look, I mean, even if they were developing nukes, which they're not, Truman knew that the Soviets were developing nukes. He didn't launch an aggressive war against them for it. And Johnson knew that Mao Zedong was developing nukes. He still didn't launch an aggressive war against the country. And the point is that you could sit here and say, just like they did with Muammar Gaddafi in Libya, you could sit here and say, no, we're just going to have a no-fly zone. We won't have boots on the ground. We won't have this. Look, Iran has already demonstrated, in a few days that this war has been going on, that they're more capable than all of the other countries we picked on in the terror wars. They've already hit Israel and killed people there. What's going to happen when a few Americans get killed? Hopefully this doesn't, but what's going to happen if that happens?
To demonstrate that they can get the bomb, but they don't have it right now. So, okay. Wow. So this is how stupid. I don't even think he realized what he said until after he said it. And then he just doubled down on the stupidity of the point. And you see Konstantin's face like, you for real? Like, oh, we're not going to say that we've got a bomb, but we're going to demonstrate that we can actually have a bomb for you all. Here you go, world. We can actually have a bomb, but we don't have it right yet. But we can get close. We've got 60% uranium enrichment. We're going to demonstrate to the entire world that we can get a bomb. We just don't have one yet. But when we do, we'll let you know, sure, because we've demonstrated that we can have one. Honestly, Dave Smith, wow. Are you that low IQ? Really, that low IQ? You're that adamant in defending Iran, are you? That you sound like a total and utter dingbat. My brain just went, whoa. The level of insanity that we've got, and he gets platformed. And the other thing is, Piers Morgan would more than likely agree with him. But then you got someone that's actually intelligent, like Konstantin, looking at this going, huh? You're not right, man. You aren't right in the head at all. And after Dave Smith said this, Konstantin ripped him a new one. And even still, that went straight over Dave Smith's head. He just doesn't care about anything to do with reason or rationale. Because in Dave Smith's mind, he's right. Everyone else that doesn't agree with him is wrong. And that's the wrong way to do it. If I was looking at everything that was being said from Dave Smith and Konstantin, and then trying to find where is the truth here, I know for a fact Konstantin is going to go straight for the truth, whereas Dave Smith is focused more on emotion and more on these fancy words and fancy phrases, and even more stupid. I can't even call them logical points because they're not even that. They fall outside of logic, to be honest with you. We'll just call them ding battery kind of points. We'll go with that because that's all Dave Smith has. He's not an expert. And by the way, him and Piers Morgan attacked Natasha Hertzstorf yet again, just cowardly at the very beginning of the show. You can go and watch it if you want. And Piers is like, oh, she's a lawyer. And even Dave Smith was saying this. And she was lying. So we had to do what we did. And she's a lawyer. And she's afraid of being interrupted a number of times. I would have thought as a lawyer, you'd get used to that. No, there's a thing called you're in a conversational setting, Piers Morgan. You don't abruptly interrupt the person when they're trying to talk and you're talking over them and you're just demeaning her. And she's an actual expert. But Dave Smith, apparently, he's the real expert, ladies and gentlemen, because you both agree on the stupid things. Anyway, that's enough from me for the time being. But you guys take care, be blessed, and I'll see you all in the next video.